The Vrike fleet appeared without warning, a black crescent of warships blotting out the stars over Eidolon 4, a human frontier colony. Their ships were sleek, organic-looking, more like predators than machines, spines and ridges glinting in the cold void. Inside the command center of the human battleship, resolute Commander Jax Mercer folded his arms, studying the holographic feed. The alien transmission crackled to life, and the image of High Marshal Veilcor filled the air. A towering creature with obsidian skin, ridged skull, and eyes that glowed like molten iron. "Humans," the Marshal's voice rumbled, low and resonant. "The Dominion of Vrike declares total war upon your kind. Your colonies, your fleets, your world. They will all kneel or burn. You are weak. You are reckless. You are unworthy of the stars." The bridge fell silent. Officers glanced nervously at one another. A declaration of total war. Humanity had expected tension, perhaps border skirmishes, but not this. Jax broke the silence with a laugh. It was sharp, sudden, and entirely inappropriate for the occasion. His crew turned to him in shock. "That's it?" Jax asked, leaning forward in his chair. "That's the big scary speech? I was expecting at least a little originality. Kneel or burn. You've been using that line since... what, the Bronze Age?" One of his lieutenants hissed, "Sir, with respect." But Jax wasn't done. He leaned toward the comms officer. "Patch me through." The comms officer hesitated, then nodded. A red light blinked on. The Marshal's hologram loomed over Jax, staring down with alien disdain. Jax saluted lazily. "Commander Jax Mercer, Human Confederation Fleet. Thanks for the notice. I'll be honest though, this feels less like a war declaration and more like... what's the word? Ah yes, an invitation." Veilcor's eyes narrowed. "Invitation? Yeah, to training." Jax grinned. "Uses? We humans have a tradition. We don't waste time with peacetime drills. If someone comes knocking, we use it as an opportunity. So congratulations, Marshal. You've just volunteered your fleet to be our sparring partners." The bridge crew stared in disbelief. Half thought their captain had lost his mind. The other half were trying not to laugh. Veilcor bared his fangs in something between a snarl and a smile. "You mock us?" "Absolutely," Jax said, deadpan. "But don't take it personally. We mock everything, especially things that take themselves too seriously." The transmission cut with a hiss of static. Outside, alien warships adjusted formation, preparing to strike. The crew looked to their captain. "Orders, sir?" the tactical officer asked. Jax leaned back in his chair, calm as though this were a simulation. "Simple. We treat this like live training. No panic, no dramatics. We fight, we learn, and we get better with every shot fired. They think they're about to crush us? Joke's on them. They just paid the tuition for the galaxy's hardest training program." The engines of the Resolute roared to life. Human ships formed up, battered old cruisers and sleek new destroyers side by side. The Vrike fleet surged forward, elegant in its deadly precision. "Sir," the navigator muttered, "we're outnumbered 3-1. Jax smirked. "Good. Wouldn't be much of a workout otherwise." The first salvos lit up the void. Plasma beams carved through shields. Kinetic slugs tore hulls apart. The battle began. On the bridge of the Resolute, amid flashing alerts and crew shouts, Jax Mercer leaned forward with a wolfish grin. "Welcome to training day, folks. Let's show the galaxy how humans learn." The battle over Eidolon 4 had lasted only hours, but its echoes rippled across the stars. News feeds blared with grainy combat footage, human cruisers weaving through alien barrages, fighters diving into impossible strafing runs, the Resolute blasting apart ships twice its size. Humanity had survived the Dominion's opening strike, barely, but instead of retreating in fear, they laughed. They called it the first lesson. To the Vrike, it was incomprehensible. Vrike War Council, orbit of Kartor. High Marshal Veilcor towered in the command chamber, flanked by his fleet lords. The chamber's walls pulsed faintly, alive with bioluminescent veins of the Vrake's living architecture. Above the central dais hovered a projection of the human colony battle. Every frame grated on the marshal's pride. He had expected panic, human ships scattering, surrendering, begging. Instead, their commander had mocked him, mocked the Dominion itself. "They should have been broken," muttered Fleet Lord Zirak, a gaunt figure with scaled jaws. "Outnumbered, outgunned. And yet, Veilcor rumbled. They fought as if they had nothing to lose. They fought as if war itself were sport." Murmurs spread among the lords. War was sacred to the Vrake. It was ritual, devotion, a test of worthiness before their gods. To see humans, primitive, young, twist war into play was heresy. Veilcor slammed a clawed hand on the dais. "Then we will show them war is not a game. We will drown them in fire until their laughter dies." None dared challenge him, but in the silence, a seed of doubt took root. Aboard the Resolute, Commander Jax Mercer strolled through the ship's corridors, nodding to passing crew. They were exhausted, some still bandaged from shrapnel wounds, but their eyes burned with a strange fire. Pride. The mess hall buzzed with chatter. Young ensigns replayed combat recordings on handheld Stimia Riens, pointing out maneuvers, laughing at near misses. To outsiders, it might look like arrogance. To Jax, it was survival instinct. Humans coped with chaos through humor. He entered the wardroom, where his officers were gathered around a holotable. "Casualty reports?" Jax asked, dropping into a chair. Lieutenant Arya Nix, his tactical officer, grimaced. 2 destroyers lost, 57 dead across the fleet. Could have been worse. "Could have been better," muttered Commander Rowe, his XO. A dour man, Rowe never shared Jax's easy levity. "We can't afford to treat this like games, sir. They're stronger, faster, better equipped." "And predictable," Jax interrupted. He tapped the holotable. A 3D display of the Vrake fleet flickered to life. They don't improvise. Every maneuver they made followed doctrine. Rigid, rehearsed, ceremonial. That's their weakness. Arya leaned forward. "So, what's the plan?" Jax grinned. "We keep learning. Every battle is another drill. Every loss teaches us something. They think they're grinding us down. They don't realize we're sharpening the blade." Alien perspective. A week later, the Dominion struck again, this time at Draven Station, a vital trade hub. The Vrake expected to decapitate human logistics. Instead, they walked into a gauntlet. Human ships didn't stand in formation. They scattered into the asteroid field surrounding the station, weaving between rocks, turning debris into cover. The Vrake formation, elegant but rigid, couldn't adapt. Ambushes shredded their wings. On the bridge of his flagship, Veilcor snarled. "Why do they hide among stone? Why do they refuse to meet us with honor?" Fleet Lord Zirak shifted uneasily. "Perhaps because they fight to learn, not to preserve. They accept loss so long as it teaches them." "Unacceptable," Veilcor hissed. "War is not training. War is finality. They will learn that truth." But as his ships retreated from yet another engagement, the lesson seemed inverted. Humanity's shift. Back aboard the Resolute, victory wasn't celebrated with parades or medals. Instead, the crew gathered in simulators. Ensigns replayed their failures, laughing at mistakes, swearing never to repeat them. Veterans coached rookies, their camaraderie deepening with every drill. "Sir," Arya said one evening, approaching Jax as he monitored training runs. "The crew? They're changing. Faster than I've ever seen. It's like they're evolving battle to battle." "That's the idea," Jax replied. "Pressure makes diamonds, or corpses. We're just making sure it's not the latter." Rowe scowled nearby. "You make it sound so simple, but morale doesn't win wars. Guns do. Jax chuckled. Then it's a good thing we've got both. Vrake miscalculation. 3 weeks into the war, the Vrake launched a massive offensive against the Atheman. The Helion Line, a chain of human colonies. They expected swift surrender. Instead, they found civilians manning defense batteries, freighters repurposed into makeshift warships, and militias trained by watching fleet recordings. The Dominion lost a third of its strike force before withdrawing. It wasn't just humanity's fleet anymore. It was the species itself. Veilcor, watching reports stream in, crushed a data slate in his claws. They should fear us. Drivak bowed his head. They do not fear, they adapt. Jax's reflection. That night, Jax stood alone on the Resolute's observation deck, staring at the stars. He thought of the names already carved into memorial plaques, of families who'd never see their loved ones again. Was he wrong to laugh? To treat this like training? The door slid open. Arya entered quietly. Couldn't sleep? Didn't try, Jax said. She joined him, gazing at the endless dark. You know, they don't see it as disrespect. The crew, your laughter, it keeps them sane. If you can joke, then maybe it means we're not doomed. Jax smiled faintly. The galaxy thinks us humans are reckless fools. Maybe they're right. But fools who learn? That's dangerous. He turned back to the stars. His reflection ghosted on the glass. Somewhere out there, the Vraik were regrouping, plotting their next move. Good, he thought. The training wasn't over. The asteroid belt of Ragnar's edge stretched like a scar across the void, a labyrinth of rock and shadow. For the Zirak Dominion, it was an obstacle. For humanity, it was a playground. The Resolute coasted silently among tumbling boulders, thrusters firing in careful bursts. Around her, a ragtag flotilla of human ships lay hidden. Cruisers darkened, corvettes hugging rocks, fighters clamped to asteroid surfaces like insects. Commander Jax Mercer stood on the bridge, watching a tactical display. Red icons marked the Vrike fleet pushing into the belt, dozens of sleek warships in perfect formation. Predictable. Here they come, Lieutenant Arya Nix said, eyes sharp on her console. 50 warships, carrier at the center. Commander Rowe muttered. And we've got 25 at best. Half of them still smell like fresh paint. Correction, Jack said, leaning on his chair. They're not half a fleet. They're half a class. And class is about to start. Some of the younger officers grinned. The phrase had become a mantra. War is training. It spread through the fleet like wildfire, turning fear into focus. The trap. The Vrake moved as expected, sweeping the asteroid field with formation fire. Plasma beams carved rocks to dust, detonating in spectacular flashes. Their doctrine was clear. Cleanse space, then advance. But doctrine had blind spots. Signal all ships, Jax ordered. Initiate pattern wolf. From the shadows, fighters burst forward, using asteroids as slingshots. They wove between Vrike beams with reckless grace, hurling torpedoes that shattered frigates' shields. At the same time, human destroyers powered up engines, darting from behind rocks like predators pouncing. Multiple contacts, Vrike officers shouted across their channels. They scatter like vermin. But vermin didn't coordinate ambushes this well. The first wave crippled the Vrike vanguard. Explosions rolled across their line as hulls split and fire blossomed into vacuum. Bridge banter. The Resolute dove into the fray, autocannons blazing. The bridge shuddered under enemy fire. Shields down to 70%, Arya called. 70? Perfect, Jack said. We're still passing. Rowe scowled. Passing? We're bleeding. Rowe, relax, Jack said smoothly. Bleeding builds stamina. He glanced around the bridge. Isn't that right, folks? A ripple of chuckles spread. Even under fire, the crew held their nerve. That was the secret. The laughter cut through the fear. The comm crackled with fighter chatter. Resolute, this is Viper 3. I've got 3 on my tail. Copy Viper 3, Jax replied without missing a beat. Evasive maneuvers. Roll left. then show them your exhaust. Works every time. There was a pause. Sir, did you just tell me to moon the enemy? Effective, isn't it? Jack smirked. Seconds later, 2 enemy fighters exploded on his display. Alien frustration. On the Vrike flagship Judicator, High Marshal Veilkor's patience frayed. He watched as human ships darted unpredictably, breaking every rule of engagement. They scatter, one of his officers snarled. No, Veilkor said slowly, realization dawning. They coordinate through chaos. Every strike, every retreat, it builds into patterns we cannot predict. Drivak, his fleet lord, dared to speak. Perhaps they fight this way because they are not bound by ritual. To them, battle is not sacred. It is a sport. Then we will crush their sport, Veilkor growled. No more patience. Unleash the carriers. Swarm them with fighters. Let us see them laugh when they drown. Turning the tide, hundreds of Vrike fighters poured into the field, swarming human ships like angry wasps. For a moment, it seemed the tide had turned. Human shields faltered, corvettes burned, fighter pilots screamed last words into comms. On the Resolute, alarms blared. "We can't hold, sir!" Arya shouted. Jax leaned forward, eyes sharp. "We're not supposed to hold. We're supposed to teach. Time for the final lesson." He tapped a command. "Release the debris nets." Hidden in the asteroid field, human ships had strung massive webs of repurposed mining cable and magnetized shrapnel. As the swarm dove in, nets snapped shut. Entire wings of Vrike fighters shredded themselves against invisible walls, colliding with rocks and each other. The comms erupted with human cheers. "Lesson 1, Jack said, voice carrying over fleet-wide channels. Never underestimate improvisation. Cost of victory. The battle raged for hours. By the time the Vrike retreated, humanity's fleet was bloodied but unbowed. The asteroid belt was littered with burning wrecks, half alien, half human. Casualty reports trickled in. Over 200 humans dead. 3 ships lost. In the wardroom afterward, the mood was grim. Officers slumped in chairs, silent. Jax entered, carrying 2 bottles of contraband whiskey. He set them on the table with a thud. "Drink!" he ordered. Rowe frowned. "Sir, this isn't the time." "This is exactly the time," Jax cut him off. "We honor the dead, yes, but we don't drown in mourning. We live because that's what they died for. So drink, laugh, and tomorrow we fight again." Arya raised a glass first. "To the fallen, and to the next lesson." The others followed. Slowly, tension eased. Jokes returned. They would grieve, but not break. Vregged out. Back aboard the Judicator, silence hung in the War Council. Losses had been heavy. Too heavy for what should have been a routine extermination. Trivak finally spoke. "High Marshal, perhaps we must reconsider. These humans, they are not like others we have conquered. Every battle strengthens them." Veilkor's molten eyes narrowed. "Then we will stop giving them battles. No more skirmishes. We gather the Armada, one overwhelming strike to end their laughter forever." But deep down, even Veilkor felt unease. For every fight he offered, the humans grew sharper, faster, more dangerous. It was as if war itself was forging them into something the galaxy had never seen. Epilogue of the chapter. On the Resolute, Jax lay in his quarters, staring at the ceiling. The adrenaline had faded, leaving only exhaustion. He thought of the rookies who'd flown like veterans today. Of the ones who hadn't made it back. War was training, yes, but training had a cost. Still, he smiled faintly. Because tomorrow, the Vrike would come again. And then humanity would be ready. "Lesson 3, he murmured to the empty room. "Never give humans homework, unless you want us to ace the exam." The war was no longer confined to distant colonies and outpost skirmishes. It had spread like wildfire, burning across star systems, consuming trade routes, pulling even civilian fleets into the line of fire. Humanity, instead of collapsing under the pressure, hardened. Where other civilizations broke when war struck home, humanity adapted. Every factory shifted to shipbuilding. Every freighter was retrofitted with railguns. Every civilian learned evacuation drills like second nature. The Dominion thought they were waging war. The truth? They were running a galactic-scale boot camp. The human shift. The Resolute docked at Vega Prime, a sprawling human stronghold. The space yards blazed with activity. Half-finished ships floated in dry dock. Marines drilled in zero-gravity hangars. And AI-guided drones ferried crates of munitions as though the war had always been here. Commander Jax Mercer stepped onto the command deck, watching new recruits hustle aboard. Teenagers with fresh uniforms, miners pressed into gunnery duty, pilots with the fewer flight hours than years lived. Rowe frowned beside him. These aren't soldiers, they're cannon fodder. Jax didn't reply at first. He watched the recruits stumble through salute practice, dropping helmets, tripping over gear. Then he smirked. They'll be soldiers by the time the next battle ends. War trains faster than any academy. Arya Nix shook her head. That's cold, sir. It's reality, Jack said quietly. Better they learn in fire than never learn at all. Dominion overconfidence. Meanwhile, aboard the Judicator, High Marshal Baelcor prepared his armada. The Dominion had gathered 300 warships, the largest single strike force they'd deployed in a century. He addressed his fleet lords with thunderous certainty. Their chaos has bought them time, no more. With this armada, we will scour their strongholds, crush the Vestadaentiotia, sink our fleets, burn their colonies. We will break their illusion of strength. The training ends today. His officers roared approval, but behind their eyes lay shadows of doubt. Every encounter with humans had cost them dearly, and those illusions of strength seemed to multiply instead of fade. The boarding gambit. The Dominion targeted Carina Outpost, a refueling hub on the edge of human space. The Resolute and her flotilla intercepted them, outnumbered once again. But this time, Jax wasn't interested in a straight fight. "Sir," Rowe said, as the battle map lit up with incoming alien contacts, "we can't hold this position." Jax's grin was sharp. "Good, we're not holding, we're boarding." Arya blinked. "Boarding? In the middle of a fleet engagement?" "Exactly," Jax said. "They think war is sacred, that ships are temples. Let's desecrate their temples." Moments later, dropships launched from the Resolute, streaking across the void under heavy fire. Human marines, clad in matte black armor, smashed into Vrike hulls with magnetic clamps. Breach charges detonated. Inside, chaos erupted. The Vrike expected duels, ceremonial combat. Instead, humans stormed through corridors with brutal efficiency, flashbangs, shotguns, knives in close quarters. They didn't fight with honor, they fought to win. "Clear!" shouted Sergeant Corrin, shoving a smoking alien body aside. "Next compartment!" another barked. Within minutes, 2 Dominion frigates were under human control. Their own weapons turned against their fleet. On the Resolute, Jax watched the chaos unfold. "Lesson 4, he said into the comm, voice calm amid the slaughter. "Never invite humans into your house. We'll redecorate." Alien panic. High Marshal Baelcor slammed his fist into the command table as reports flooded in. "They are seizing our ships? Impossible! Boarding actions are dishonorable, wasteful." Drivak spoke carefully. "Marshal, they are not bound by our codes. They do not see dishonor. Only opportunity." "Then we will drown them in fire," Baelcor snarled. "Destroy our captured ships if necessary. Burn them all!" Even as he gave the order, he could see it. The shift in his officers' eyes. Fear. Not of death, but of humanity's madness. Human adaptation. The battle dragged for hours. The Dominion lost 5 frigates, 2 carriers, and countless fighters. Not because humanity had the stronger fleet, but because humanity refused to fight by rules. On the Resolute, smoke filled the bridge, systems sparking. Casualties? Jax demanded. Hi, Arya admitted. We lost 2 destroyers, over 400 dead. Rowe scowled. This isn't training anymore. It's butchery. Jax looked him dead in the eye. Every butchered man and woman teaches 10 more how not to die. That's how we survive. That's how we win. The crew fell silent, but none could deny it. Every engagement made the rookies sharper, the veterans deadlier. Humanity was evolving in real time, battle by battle. Seeds of collapse. On the Dominion side, the sacred narrative of war began to crack. Soldiers whispered about humans who laughed under fire, who boarded ships with knives, who turned death into drills. For the Vrake, war was holy. For humans, it was a classroom. And classrooms produced graduates. The Forge. Weeks later, humanity launched its first counteroffensive. Not defense, but strike. Using salvaged Vrake ships, they infiltrated enemy lines, sowing chaos. Sabotage teams blew supply depots. Mining colonies detonated asteroids in ambushes. The galaxy watched in disbelief. A species that should have folded under Dominion pressure was instead growing stronger the longer the war dragged on. Back on Vega Prime, Jax addressed a hall of recruits. His voice carried over loudspeakers, echoing through steel walls. You've heard the stories. You've lost friends, family, homes. The Dominion thinks that breaks us. They don't understand. Every loss, every scar, every drop of blood, it forges us. We are not broken. We are tempered. And when we're tempered enough... He paused, scanning their faces, some fearful, some burning with fire. We will shatter the hammer that tried to break us. The hall erupted in cheers. Veilcor's resolve. On the Judicator, Veilcor watched footage of humanity's guerrilla strikes. His claws trembled with fury. They think themselves invincible, he hissed. No, Marshal, Drivak said softly. They think themselves students. And every strike we deliver, we teach them. Veilcor's gaze burned. Then the teaching ends. Summon every fleet. At Vega Prime, we end this farce. If humanity wishes for a final lesson, we will give them annihilation. On the Resolute, Jax received the same intelligence. The Dominion was gathering for one last decisive strike. He leaned back in his chair, smiling faintly. Perfect, he murmured. Final exam. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Yes? But more than one of them smiled too. War had forged them. Now it was time to see what they had become. The battlefield was silent. Not the quiet of peace, but the aftermath of thunder. Broken starships hung like frozen carcasses in orbit, venting trails of smoke and molten debris. The alien war banners, the proud crimson sigils of the Zirak Dominion, floated in shattered fragments across space. On Earth's flagship Resolute, Commander Elena Miles stood at the observation deck, her reflection mingling with the wreckage beyond. The war, if it could even be called that, had lasted 3 weeks. For the Zirak, it was a total campaign. For humanity, it had been an exercise. The comms officer broke the stillness. Commander, the Zirak High Command is requesting a ceasefire negotiation. They're offering unconditional terms. Elena exhaled slowly, folding her hands behind her back. She had predicted this. Zirak's strategy had been direct, overwhelming, and utterly predictable. Numbers meant little when your opponent refused to fight by the same old rules. Patch them through, she said. The holographic projection materialized. Supreme Warlord Krexen, his scaled body hunched, his once proud crest drooping, his voice, once a thunderous growl, cracked under the weight of humiliation. You! Humans! His golden eyes flickered with disbelief. How? How did you dismantle centuries of conquest in mere weeks? Elena raised an eyebrow. You came at us with war. We treated it as training. That's the difference. Krexen's jaw clenched. Training. Every battle sharpened our tactics. Every skirmish tested a new system. You thought that you were breaking us. All you did was help us improve. Her words were calm, but the weight behind them pressed against the warlord's pride like a blade. Behind Elena, Admiral Rhodes entered, his voice carrying the iron steadiness of age. "You declared war on humanity," he said, "thinking we'd be like your past prey, fearful, submissive. Instead, you handed us the perfect scenario to test our fleets, our weapons, and our resolve. The truth is simple. While you fought for victory, we fought for practice." Crexan snarled, but there was no fire in it. "You mock us." Rhodes leaned forward, his eyes hard. "No. We're warning you. You lost to us while we weren't even trying to kill you. Imagine if we did." The silence that followed crushed the warlord's defiance. He lowered his gaze. The projection flickered out. Hours later, the human fleet gathered. Soldiers, engineers, and pilots crowded the mess halls, sharing stories of near misses and daring maneuvers. To them, it hadn't felt like a war either. It had felt like a challenge course. Difficult, yes, but never hopeless. Captain Aidan Cross sat with his squad, recounting their last drop assault. "They swore their fortress was impenetrable," he said between bites of protein ration. "We breached it in 12 minutes. 12. I've had tougher simulations at West Point." Laughter erupted around the table. A young Marine leaned in. "Do you think the Zirak will try again?" Cross smirked. "Not unless they're suicidal. They'll spend the next century rethinking everything they thought they knew about combat." On the outer decks, Elena found herself alone again, staring at the stars. She thought about the reports flooding in, every Zirak colony signaling surrender, every allied species watching in stunned silence. The galaxy had changed overnight. The door behind her hissed open. Rhodes stepped out. "You did well," he said. Elena tilted her head. "We all did, but this wasn't just about beating them." Rhodes nodded. "No. This was about showing the galaxy what humanity is. We adapt, we learn, and we don't scare easily." He turned, his eyes locking with hers. "Do you understand what this means? Every species out there just realized the same thing the Zirak did. War only makes us stronger. The more they push, the sharper we become. If they feared us yesterday, they'll dread us tomorrow." Elena allowed herself the faintest smile. "Then let tomorrow come." Epilogue. Weeks later, the Galactic Council convened. Dozens of species filled the chamber, their voices hushed as the human delegation entered. For centuries, the council chambers had been arenas of power, where empires boasted of fleets, threatened rivals, and dictated the fates of weaker worlds. But today, when the humans walked in, the chamber went still. Every representative had watched the Zirak Dominion fall. Not crumble, not fracture, fall. And all against an opponent who had treated the war as nothing more than training drills. The council chair, a solemn-eyed Valen, finally spoke. "Humanity, you have demonstrated a strength unlike any we have seen. Tell us, what are your intentions?" Admiral Rhodes stepped forward. His words carried not arrogance, but certainty. "Our intention is simple. Do not mistake our patience for weakness. Do not mistake our laughter for carelessness. If war comes again, know this." He paused, letting the silence hang like a guillotine. "What you call survival, we call practice." The chamber erupted in whispers, fear spreading like wildfire. Humanity had entered the galactic stage, and the galaxy had just learned the truth. They weren't fighting for their lives. They were just warming up.